JP, thank you so much for being here today and joining us for this interview. I think what you're doing around kind of the product in transportation and logistics, you're the only company that we have within buyers and builders kind of in the network right now that's doing anything like this. And I actually think there's a lot of really fascinating topics that we'll dive into today that touches on resource allocation, experimentation that's, I think, structured a little bit different than a lot of the other kind of traditional enterprise workflows. So thanks for being here.
Very excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Dave.
So JP, maybe to set the stage, maybe walk everyone through the background of the company, when you started, and the product that you're selling now, and actually the problem, the pressing problem that you're solving.
Yeah, we had a fascinating journey into the world of trucking and logistics. So the company Storyboard launched in 2019, and our initial focus was broad, and it was always centered on audio. But our focus was on building a podcasting solution for all kinds of companies to distribute trainings and other materials. And we got a few years into that business, and we were working with a lot of enterprise customers. But when we looked and kind of took the good hard look in the mirror at where are we having a lot of impact, what was interesting was there was a particular subsection of our business where podcasting and audio were uniquely valuable. And it was a couple of trucking fleets that we worked with. And we started asking ourselves why. And we spent time with those customers. Why are they using our product 3x more than anyone else, for instance? And what we learned about was how uniquely challenging it is to reach drivers when they're in the cab. These are folks who are driving 8 to 14 hours a day on the road. Many of them will never come into an office or will come into an office a few times per year. And what we started thinking about was, why is no one building a platform for this unique user? And this is my trivia fact. With 3.6 million truck drivers on the road, this is the single largest workforce in America. And that's where we re-entered our business.
So maybe walk us through what the product is and walk us through kind of how you deliver the product from, is this something that you sell to a truck driver independently? Is this someone that you sell to a fleet and it kind of goes, top down? And also maybe educate us on like, what does the trucking logistics market look like from a buyer perspective too?
Yeah, I'll start at the top. And so for us, we sell directly to fleets. So our focus is mid-market to enterprise, and that's typically a few hundred drivers up to 3,000 plus drivers who can be on the road. And what our product does, I mentioned that we always knew there was something special about audio, but in 2024, we went out to market with our product and our core product of our business. And it's a hands-free voice assistant for drivers that runs on the work phones and tablets that they already use. One of my fleet leaders, to put this in Marvel Iron Man terms, calls it a Jarvis for drivers. What if a driver could do their job, could be safe, and could get the answers and information they need on the road in a fully heads-up and hands-free way? And the thing that was surprising to us to talk about where the trucking industry has come from is that there's this pattern that goes back 40 years, from drivers using payphones to drivers getting onto beepers in the 90s to cell phones today, which is really the major communication channel for truck drivers. And it was this crazy thing where almost every major trucking fleet understands the liability and safety risk of using phones, but there wasn't a better way. And the thing I always say is that I think this is an industry that a lot of people are surprised is a massive buyer of technology. Every time you pass an 18-wheeler, it is a massive computer from the tractor to the trailer. But the one gap that was there is that the truck driver doesn't have a platform built for them. And that's what we deliver by working with a fleet and then deploying to the entire, ideally, the entire fleet-wide rollout of drivers.
What sort of customers or customer segments are you servicing now when it comes to fleets? Are there certain industries around fleets that you tend to congregate in, or is it more horizontal in nature?
It's pretty horizontal within trucking and transportation. So within freight carriers, we work typically mid-market and up. And I think the big reason there is that these are customers who are incredibly conscious, not just of the safety opportunity for hands-free, but the efficiency opportunity. Even among large fleets, profit margins are often 5 to 10%. And so these are very lean businesses that are focused on reducing not just that liability risk of cell phones, But what if some of the reasons that drivers had to get off the road and call somebody didn't exist by automating and building out great workflows? So we tend to center there because they have a sophisticated menu of technology they're already working with. And we
Hmm.
like to hook into it, figure out workflows that can be highly effective for these fleets, and then deploy them to try to make drivers as safe and profitable every single day.
Who are you selling into inside of the fleet? Who's the typical buyer?
We have two archetypes that we see a lot, and it's often the safety leader or the operations leader. And by the end of the conversation, frequently it ends up being both being involved in the buying decision because it taps both of their sides of the business.
So you have safety and operations as a buyer. From kind of that sales persona, what's your typical deployment cycle? Like when you're selling the product, how fast can a fleet go live with the customer? What are you looking for leading indicators to show that there's value there? Walk us through that, what that looks
Yeah, I'll talk to the storyboard end, and then I'll talk about some typical motions that we see. So we have actually a couple of customers right now that are going from first sales conversation to launching storyboard with drivers in under 2 weeks. A big reason for that is that not only do we know the hardware that these drivers already use, but we've stood up integrations into these key telemetry software pieces so that we can deploy really quickly, from single sign-on for drivers to get them into the app to actually detecting the motion of the vehicle to turn our app on and off.
Wow.
In a
Wow.
more typical cycle, like that's really fast. And trust me, I get very excited when that happens. We're often doing a 1 to 3 month process with a customer, from learning about kind of where they're focused, understanding what are the KPIs where a voice assistant could make impact, and then deploying a solution that actually has some customization built for them. Some of the big kind of light bulb moments that we get to, let's take safety. For most trucking and transportation companies, on Monday, the safety director is going to look at their CSA scorecard, the federal scorecard they have for the safety of their fleet, from everything from their accident rate to how effectively they're completing compliance tasks. And so if we see that a customer is focused on moving the needle on that item, we'll look at what can we do to actually automate alerting a driver to a potential compliance issue so they can solve it without a human intervention. And so that, on kind of the longer side, that's where we operate from to really build a customized solution for the fleets that we work with.
Maybe walk through your kind of evolution of pricing and where you settled on price now.
Yeah, as I mentioned, we launched to market in 2024, and our focus was very simple. We believed in this product and that it could not only unlock drivers, but it would be something that drivers like and want to use and that they would treat as their go-to. Where we netted out from that, more than a year down the road, is that we have an introductory price that we do based on the number of seats. This is really important within transportation because this is an industry with a high frequency of turnover. So the ability to move seats, grow, expand, that's pretty critical to our buyer. And then, as I mentioned, a lot of the push that we're seeing from a product perspective is how can we use automated and agentic workflows to transform these businesses? And so our attitude is it's almost like a forward deployed engineer. We'll go to terminals, we'll sit with safety teams and dispatchers, and we'll build things that use the existing templates that we have, but fit within the way they work. Does a driver do 1 stop a day? Do they do 14 stops a day? That's a very different driver. And then we can do a customized price for those types of workflows as well.
Slightly different topic, JP, but touching on something that you said around a forward deployed engineer. I think that term is now used in almost every interview that we've now had with the founder, thus far. You were at Google for a really long time. I don't think there wasn't a concept of a forward deployed engineer kind of going on site. Why do you think that's so popular right now? Or why do you think that's so kind of in vogue around that type of?
I feel like I've lived this transition. I starting my career in the pre-dawn of the AI evolution and now looking at where we are now. I would actually focus on a really simple reason, which is that engineering has been democratized in a pretty serious way. I don't think I shared this. I have never been a software engineer, right? From my days at Google to where I am now. And I compare that to what I can accomplish being on site even 16 months ago, when before we started selling this, we had 2 strategic partners in trucking who had used our last product. And we said, let's build this with you. so many workflows that we think about or that a customer gets excited about, you had that unenviable feeling of, I'm going to go back to my engineering team and talk about a multi-month project. And those same projects are now accomplishable with prompt engineering. It
Hmm.
has made it so much faster and more efficient to build to your customer. And so I think it's really upscaled the value of being with a customer when you can look at them in the eye and say, wait a second, I can actually have this for you in a couple of weeks. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you, well, the other topic that's also been coming up too, and I think it ties to your business very succinctly, is one founder kind of talked about the idea of vibe coding inside of the enterprise and using vibe coding as a means of not the end product that you sell to the enterprise customer, the enterprise buyer, but something that you can validate kind of the wants and the needs and the feature sets that are there. So rather than building out like a product spec sheet that you would typically spend a lot of hours and weeks on, now you can actually vibe code an experience that the enterprise customers there. The flip side to that is that obviously there's a lot of compliance and security risks that I don't think an enterprise customer is going to be saying, hey, I vibe coded something off the street, I'm going to buy it. When, in this case with the flow deployed engineer, what you're doing on site with your customers, how do you think about and how do they think about navigating? You can actually bring code to the enterprise extremely efficiently now, but how do you navigate like the trust, the safety, the compliance aspects that's there, especially for the customer that you're serving, which is truly like a life or death, type experience on the road.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. Is that the cab experience of a driver is not a place that most people would think is very ripe for experimentation. Getting the answer wrong can, at minimum, mean that a driver's day has been disrupted, right? That they could add hours onto the trip that they're making to get a load delivered. And at worst, can put them at an inherent safety risk. So it's something we have to be extremely intentional about doing what we do. We talk a lot about air traffic control problems because that really is what the trucking industry operates on. In your words, like a life or death situation, that's very real for a truck driver. I actually think that this is a value add when you build that in the DNA of your team and the way you operate, and especially how you speak with enterprise customers. I was at a conference last week, and it was amazing because I've been at this conference 3 times now. 3 years ago, there was no discussion of AI. This time, 5 of the 9 sessions were either directly about AI or mostly about AI. And now fleets, and I think in a lot of industries this is the case, they all know they're supposed to be doing something in this area, right? But they don't have the answer to what. And so many teams within trucking have built in-house engineering teams, in-house development teams. But where I think startups and technology companies can be excellent and can be a value add even to large established enterprises is how do you build AI within a set group of parameters or guardrails? And that's something we've got really accustomed to from not just how we build the product, but the way we QA, the way we do driving testing, and the way we get feedback from drivers is that we can move quickly and do it with the insight of understanding how will this impact someone when they're on the road, which is a unique
Hmm.
thing that we have the opportunity to do.
What did you see maybe at that conference or even for your customers when it comes to technology, experimentation? Whether that be, through kind of what we call SaaS 2.0, that's been very prevalent, and we know how SaaS works, to what we're discussing now, kind of AI native workflows.
So I think there's a lot of experimentation that's happened in the former, and some of this is unique to the vertical that we operate in. The argument I would make is that if you look at the last 20 years of technology within trucking and transportation, there's been a massive amount of innovation around fleet management from the telemetry companies and the electronic logging companies, some of whom have IPO'd. These are really big, serious players who have entered the industry. I think where a lot of the trucking companies are strapped right now is at the core profit center of trucking. The only employee that when they do something, an invoice goes out is the truck driver. And I think that that's been a gap that a lot of these companies are feeling. And we're fortunate because it gives us an opportunity. How do we start to use AI to innovate within the cab? That to me is where the custom workflows and agentic workflows are so powerful because you're taking both what I would describe as a push. What are the things that a fleet needs to do every day to stay in compliance when we're talking about safety? On the operation side, to confirm a load and make sure there's going to be someone there to pick it up.
Hmm.
But that's only one side of the coin. The pull side of this is how much information drivers need while they're on the road that they've been unable to access. One of our fleet leaders estimates that 80% of calls that are made to safety and dispatch by drivers should not exist. The data is there. It's been there for 10 years. But the core problem is there hasn't been an interface in order to reach it. So I think, speaking selfishly, we're really excited that we have the real proving ground for how can we make drivers more effective. But I think at the fleet leader level, they're thinking really carefully of how do we start to do every part of our business, from the way we administrate the fleet or administer the fleet to the way that drivers actually execute their job every day, which is a big question.
Would you say, I think in V 1.0 of Storyboard, right, the ability to have mobile phones and RSS for podcasting allowed Storyboard to exist. Obviously, a compliance setting in terms of what you had there for kind of, inside organizations for compliant internal podcasts. It sounds like what you're discussing here, what made Storyboard 2.0 possible is, and I've never heard you say it before like this, but the cab and the 18-wheeler is basically a lot of sensors. It's a rolling computer. And some of these are private companies that they built products that sell inside of the cab. I think there's a public company called Samsara, right, that does all the telemetry. Do you think, with the advent of all the compute and all of the hardware that's in the cab from a truck driver, like your ability to have now Storyboard be successful, if it wasn't for that kind of foundation and that infrastructure, you wouldn't be able to do what you're doing now. Is that like a fair assessment?
And if we're playing out what shoulders of giants are you standing on, right? Which I think, we're very excited about our business, but I think timing is everything. And I think there are two seismic shifts that have happened that voice assistants, not just us, but I look at what's going to happen in an Amazon warehouse, what's going to happen for a picker who goes to a grocery store to get items. I think voice, I'm very bullish on what voice is going to become as a user experience across a lot of AI tools.
Mm-hmm.
One paradigm shift is obviously the fact that every truck driver, from owner operator up to somebody at a 5,000 driver company, now has a tablet that's in their cab sold by someone like Samsara or Motive or these other companies. So it gave us, while it's a big question, it gave us a question to answer, which is, how do you build a voice assistant that can work on that tablet, that doesn't need to communicate with the cloud in order to take a message or receive a message, given the coverage areas and problems that truck drivers run into? Because it's a rugged job, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a big factor. The other thing, though, not to continue to fly the flag of AI, is that this is a product that would not have been possible 5 years ago, right? I think a lot of people listening have probably used text to voice at some level. You can think about Siri as an example. And you think about how many times you've used a product like that and it doesn't get what you say or what you want to do right. Now think about that problem within a truck, which is moving. It's in a bad coverage area, and there's 80 decibels of volume, which is about what you would hear at a rock concert. We've had to be able to specialize and customize a system that's built from the ground up for drivers to operate in really challenging conditions and do the job well. And that's not just the ability to take in and process audio from an app. It's the ability to, without anyone intervening, optimize the sound quality so that it works better for a driver, for someone who has a different accent or a different way of speaking. And these are things that only recently became possible.
Sounds like you're having a lot of fun, JP.
Always a sunshiny day in trucking and transportation, Dave.
Also, I think, if I look behind you on the screen, it looks like you're a recent graduate and you have a new master's. Can you maybe tell the audience what that is behind you?
So my dark secret is I don't come from trucking. I worked at Google for 7 years before embarking on this journey. And, I got to give a lot of credit to our VP of sales, Maggie, because she signed me up for a 5-day class over a holiday weekend where I did an institute with professional fleet managers who were rising stars at all these big trucking fleets in America. And so it's like the best and brightest of trucking and JP for an intensive. And it was everything from finance to sales to maintenance. I remember getting to this class and the first question was about the depth of a wheel well that you needed on a refrigerated, tractor. And I almost walked out because I'm like, how can I possibly do this? But I would encourage, especially for anyone who's building vertical focused products, it was one of the best professional experiences of my life, of being around really smart people who know this industry in a non-sales context and just getting to soak in information.
Yeah. JP, this has been awesome. Thanks so much for taking the time. For folks who want to learn more about Storyboard, want to get in touch with you, learn about the product, what's the best contact details?
Yeah, please find more about us at storyboard.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, JP Gooderham. Would love to talk, and I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, JP.